You've done the right thing. You've insulated your ceiling. You've insulated your underfloor. But you're still cold. Best you finish the job. And to match your walls.
So despite the government's literal mandate to scrap this sort of what they call nonsense, there's a real risk of capitulation to the vested interests and rent seekers, is what the Taxpayers Union writes. So it's all up for consultation. That ends soon, and one of the options for the Minister of RMA Reform, Christopher Bishop, is favouring is to no longer apply Te Mana o Te Wai to urban developments, but keep Te Mana o Te Wai for the purposes of regional water planning and regulation. So basically the David Parker scheme would be kept for all other purposes and aspects of regional district plans. So the Taxpayers Union says that could be economically crippling for the livelihoods of those who rely on water, farmers, and this expensive what they call nonsense and uncertainty will remain. Is this a breathless letter devoid of facts, or do they hold genuine concerns about being buried under layers of bureaucracy and debates about life force and Te Ao Māori world concepts? Submissions on all this close within a fortnight. They want the government to ditch all this, of course. The government has said, hang on a second, we've been working with this for a while and it may not change. Tina Porou has worked as an environmental planner and a tangata whenua advocate in the natural resource management space for a couple of decades now. Projects like Papakainga housing, social wellbeing, engaged in national policy interventions in water, climate change, biodiversity, specific experience in areas like water allocation, cultural impact assessments, and I welcome her to the program. Tina, kia ora, welcome to the platform.
Kia ora, Duncan.
Nice to have you on.
Thank you.
This letter I've just outlined this letter that the Taxpayers Union have sent out in the last 24 hours, alarmed at what's going on, that the government may keep Te Mana o Te Wai. What's your role and how do you see it?
Look, I've been involved in the development and the implementation of Te Mana o Te Wai probably since 2017. And I think it's a really simple concept. Te Mana o Te Wai is simply a hierarchy. The first right of water goes to water for its ability to sustain the ecosystems that live within it. And then once you have that first right of water to go to water, then the second right of water goes to humans to have access to safe and abundant drinking water for our human needs. And then once those two areas of the hierarchy are managed, then the final hierarchy clicks into place and we can share the rest of the water for sustainable development, for cultural purposes, for recreation, for all the things we love, deeply love, as New Zealanders, so that we can ensure we have the right water in the right place for all of our community's needs in a way that really allows for our grandchildren and future generations to continue to enjoy the waterways that we love so much.
And so these concerns that it's become overly bureaucratic and bogged down in, say, the Te Ao Māori world, what would you say to that?
What I would say is that the latest iteration of Te Mana o Te Wai in the National Policy Statement was put into place in 2020. We went straight into COVID right during that time, and so there was not a lot of ability for anyone to really bring people along with them. So we didn't have the chance to talk to people about what it was. We didn't have the chance to embed the tools and the resources to transition into that space. But fundamentally, it is a great and functioning way for us to ensure that we have good quality fresh water for all the sustainable uses. And what we know is that the water has been degrading massively over the last decades, and we have real troubles with fresh water quality and quantity. And the idea that we can do exactly what we're doing now or keep doing worse than we're doing now is just a myth.
Yeah, we haven't done a good job at protecting water. I mean, those are the facts. Look at Havelock North and go back and go forward from there. And it's been a debacle. You've got small councils with a limited rating base all having to sort of create their own path to fresh water. And we've proved to have failed.
And I think too, there was a real fear-mongering campaign, largely against Māori, because Te Mana o Te Wai had Māori words. But it is a universal human concept that just happened to be sourced from Mātauranga Māori. That doesn't make it wrong. That doesn't make it biased towards a certain community group. It makes it a human process that has been defined in legislation. And I think a lot of the concerns have been around the fact that it was Māori. But fundamentally, the Three Waters approach previously understood that we had long-term underinvestment in infrastructure in every single community. As a result of that underinvestment, we have now reached a point of crisis around water infrastructure. Now, for whatever reason, people got distracted, whether it was through misogyny or racism, and then we were at a point now where we've tried to create a new system which targets things like te mana o te wai being removed, but in actual fact, we're going to have higher rates as a result of us not banding together, using scale, and being able to leverage off a broader, rate-paying base to enable that infrastructure investment.
I think scale is crucial here, isn't it? Scale is the word, I think, because some things don't do well when it comes to scale, but other things do, and water is clearly one of them. The taxpayers union calls this spiritual nonsense. It must be replaced, and that there's a real risk of capitulation to vested interests and rent seekers. Who owns the water?
So the fact is, the water owns itself. And that is a fundamental, misunderstanding in New Zealand around ownership, which comes from a Western framework. What we have always said is water has a right to itself, and that is what te mana o te wai says. Now, people can get caught up in whether it's spiritual nonsense or not, but the reality is, if you do not have a hierarchy that really puts at the centre the well-being and the health of fresh water for its own right, then we will be consistently having less water quality. We will have more arguments over allocation of water. If you don't have a clear, stable hierarchy that focuses on having enough water for its own, well-being for the communities, then we're going to have less stability for economic opportunities in this country, not more.
So what's national up to then?
Stability.
So what's national up to then? Because they certainly gave the impression during perhaps the election campaign that they would look to, water this sort of stuff down. But ultimately, I think they're probably going to potentially stick with the status quo. Where do you think they're at?
Look, from my perspective, I think they are pushing towards making Māori more visible in New Zealand. And it's clear in every single piece of legislation that they're pushing through, whether it's the invisibility of te tiriti o Waitangi, whether it's trying to reduce iwi and hapu input in resource management decisions, whether it's, our what we're seeing in the social services sector or, oranga tamariki. I think there is a trend towards just a blanket approach to reduce the impact and the influence of te ao Māori in New Zealand. And so what I am most scared about is that they are throwing the baby out with the bathwater, and they are focusing on those issues for retaining votes instead of saying, actually, te mana o te wai is good for everybody. It's good for whether you're Māori or non-Māori, and it's good for the water, and it's good for our economy. And yes, we may need some real investment in helping people understand it and also working through some of the practical implications of it, but that doesn't mean it's wrong.
It should just be good for all New Zealanders, shouldn't it? I mean, good, clean water that we can firstly sustain ourselves with, drink, is important because otherwise we die. And secondly, to sustain our agricultural base, whether they be Māori farmers, Pākehā farmers, who cares? I mean, as long as it's good water available. Who makes the decisions then? Who gets the water? What's the Māori interest in this?
So Te Mana o Te Wai actually really clearly states in the National Policy Statement that all communities get to decide how their water is managed and allocated in their regional council boundaries. So I think it was another myth that said, oh my gosh, Māori are going to come in and they're going to take over. In reality, what it enables is a collaborative approach. And, Māori have a massive input into the economy. We own 1.3 million hectares of land in this country. We also have significant impacts. The recent Bill report, really demonstrated the wealth and the impact of the Māori economy. So we want good water too. I think the challenge is to take away from some of those polarised discussions and go to the heart of what this looks like, which is we are an agribusiness-based economy. We are a tourism-based economy. both of those economies rely heavily on having safe, abundant access to clean water. And Te Mana o Te Wai provides the guardrails for that. Without it, we will see more and more vested interests trying to use water in a single generation and really not caring at all about the future generation
Give
of
me
our
an example
country.
of
And
that.
I think,
Give me an example of that. What would be, who are we talking about there?
so, for example, there are sectors, and this is, not the whole sector, but there are sectors in the agribusiness spaces who are very keen to make sure that they can have water take consents in particular catchments that allow them to irrigate as a majority of the water takes in that area. And that's common. That is not a myth, that is real. And so what Te Mana o Te Wai does is it stops the worst of that extraction. It doesn't stop extraction, but it says if you can operate within good, strong environmental limits, you are welcome here. But if you can't, then you're not allowed to take all of the water out of a stream for one particular purpose.
And who makes that decision?
Business.
So if are there regional committees, are there? And then who sits on those committees? Is it a 50-50 thing, iwi, or what is it?
No, there isn't. And that's another myth about this whole kind of focus on co-governance and co-management, as if those arrangements were making ultimately the decision on these spaces. In reality, what happens is, under the National Policy Statement, regional councils are required to go out to their communities, including tangata whenua, and have conversations about what the values are that they think are important for their waterways. From those conversations, rules and policies are set. These guide how consents are managed within a council, and sometimes those consent applications will go to a regional council hearing, an environment court hearing, and those representatives are put on there by the communities. So I think, there's a real myths around this.
Well, and until it becomes a reality for someone, or otherwise it is a myth. And what about should farmers worry that iwi are going to block their consents for, or block their requests for water?
You've done the right thing. You've insulated your ceiling. You've insulated your underfloor. But you're still cold. Best you finish the job. And to match your walls.